Mark Rogers TV talking a little Penn State football with Kelly Rippin from Fox 17 in Nashville. This is a little bit different discussion, and I look forward to this, Kelly, because you probably get a feel for seeing all the, I was going to say garbage. I'm going to have a little bit more respect for my content than that. The stuff that I'm throwing out there with the guys that are breaking down, you know, the backup left guard and that sort of thing. We can just kind of talk a little Penn State football from a fan's perspective, and it's always great to hear from you. So how are things going?
Good, very good. It's been hot and humid and just awful down here in the South. So I am very ready for football season. We're finally getting a break, and actually all of our high schools start football here in Tennessee tonight, which is pretty crazy. So they start high school football tonight, and the first game is, I can't remember what time, but everyone's ready for it down here, and I'm ready for it to not be 95 with 95% humidity. So
I think it's pretty much everywhere when it's gotten extremely hot the last month, because I'm in Connecticut. You know, you think Connecticut, 55 degrees out, the yep. Fall leaves, the whole deal, and it was 99 the other day.
It's so funny too, because, you know, everyone down here for the most part is pretty used to it, but I have friends that are working in Boston and different places up north, and it's 95 today. And I'm like, trust me, we've not had a day that has not been in the 90s for close to 3 weeks until I want to say Tuesday of this week. So this is a welcome change. It's pouring right now, as I told you, which is the first time it's rained in I don't know how long. So we're all very ready. And now they're talking fall-like weather, which I think they have a different idea of fall than I do, but that's okay. I'll take it.
It won't be a big surprise if we watch our first couple of weeks of football, especially where you are in 85, 90 degree weather. But we know when there's football, it's going to cool off at some point.
It's on the horizon, so I'll take it.
All right, so Penn State, I'm thinking that if James Franklin racks up another 7-6 season, 7-6, 7-6, 7-6, maybe he gets a nickname. There's a trend here, possibly.
He's got to break that this year, and I don't know that this is going to be the year for him to break it. I am predicting he's not at Penn State much longer, but that's my own feelings. He just hasn't sold me, and you and I have talked about this before. I get a lot of the used car salesman vibe from him, and not enough of the delivery on the field. And, you know, we talked about it. I haven't done a lot of research yet on individual players, but I think a lot of the focus this year is going to be on matchups and on him specifically. Is he going to be able to take this football team and make it competitive within the Big Ten, even outside the Big Ten? We've got some big matchups this year. So I think that's going to be the big focus of the season, which has me very nervous, but you know, optimistic. I always go into it optimistic.
Got to be optimistic.
Yes.
Why watch? Why be a fan if you're not optimistic to a certain extent?
Right. Well, unless I turn into like a Bears fan where it's just eternally disappointed, or a Browns fan.
That was the better option for the punchline.
I think I have a couple friends that are Bears fans that just feel like even though their seasons aren't always disappointing, that they never quite can get past that. So I almost feel like Penn State is a little bit comparable, because we win games, we're competitive, but we never quite get over that hump. And I think that's how Bears fans feel. Browns fans are just a sad bunch. I feel.
Yeah, that's an apt comparison. I like that one with the Bears. The Browns are just hopeless. It's just a disaster.
And it's entertaining for me as a Pittsburgh fan. So
I know it's entertaining. Maybe it will one day get boring and you'll long for a rivalry. But I guess you got that with the Bengals.
I felt happy for them when the Cavs won. It hurt me to say that, but I was like, man, that's a miserable city to live in. They at least deserve that much.
Some people think it's miserable for other reasons as well.
Yes,
but it's close to home for me, so I take some pride in it. My son actually took off that morning for the parade and made the 8-hour drive and just had to be in it.
I support that 100%. I mean, anytime that any Pittsburgh teams have won, which is more often than Cleveland fans, I would imagine, but
somewhat.
It's always been fun to try to be a part of that stuff. So my parents actually did not go down for the Penguins Stanley Cup, which I think they were happy because it was really hot and a record crowd of people. So they were kind of glad that they skipped out on it instead. But No, I support that. I think anyone's got to, if you can do it and you have the time, you got to be a part of it.
So basically, my brief take on James Franklin is if you look at the recruiting rankings, so if you look at any particular player, obviously they could be a boom or bust. But if you look at them as a whole, they're very accurate. People bust on these recruiting rankings, but who finishes in the top 5 in recruiting every year and who's competing for national championships? They're very close to what results on the field. And his recruiting has been strong, maybe not quite to the extent of an Ohio State, but very strong, like top 15 classes nationally. So he's getting a reputation, and I think he brought this from Nashville as well, as being a guy that can really connect with the kids, bring them in, inspire them, do all the emotional type coaching and inspiration. But as a tactician, especially when you've got Urban Meyer on the other sideline or a Jim Harbaugh, Mark D'Antonio, 3 of the best in the business, he doesn't stack up.
You know, it's when I worked in Cincinnati, this was always kind of a conversation. It's kind of like the Marvin Lewis situation. He's a great coach. He can assemble this team of people that on paper should be really successful, but can't seem to put it all together on the field. And there was always the conversation in Cincinnati of put Marvin in the head office, take him off the field, put him in the head office to get him a job getting these people to Cincinnati, and then let somebody else put it on the field, put the pieces together. So maybe that's kind of what James Franklin is running into. And yeah, as you mentioned, I mean, the conversation always seems to go back to he was able to do it at Vanderbilt with less of a name in football in a very difficult conference. Why is he not able to translate that in the Big Ten? And I think we've talked before about how, you know, at the same time when he got hired, the Big Ten didn't have the lineup of coaches that it has now. And he's facing a much different challenge than maybe he anticipated or was initially presented. But I mean, that's college football. You got to learn to adapt to it. And if he's this great mastermind, if he's this fantastic coach, he should be able to also adjust and move forward.
Kelly Rippin from Fox 17 in Nashville. Kelly, you know I look at this stuff every day. I'm a college football nut. Penn State's in this situation that nobody else in the country's in. Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State at the top of the division. You're talking 3 of the very best programs in college football. Down at the bottom, Indiana, Maryland, Rutgers. I don't think there's any chance of Penn State dropping to that level. So they've got this buffer of 3 teams that they should be able to beat up. But to reach the elite, they're dividing the division, and they're very much entrenched unless something really breaks. Most likely it's going to break to where they can compete with the best, rather than I don't see them dropping to the bottom with the bottom feeders. But that's where they are right now.
Yeah, it's a very clear dividing line. And as you mentioned, Penn State is the dividing line. So, you know, you hope that they aren't going to drop to that level. But I was in Philadelphia last year for the Temple game. And while Temple is absolutely a competitive football team, that game, gosh, you know, 5 years ago wouldn't have even been a concern. There would have been a couple of touchdowns that would have gone the wrong way. You know, again, 5 years ago, but we would have come back and won that game in ringing fashion. And it would have been fun for all of us Penn Staters in the city of Philadelphia to kind of walk around puffing our chest a little bit. Instead, you know, we're looking around going, what is happening right now? Why is this, you know, what is going on? And I think they're going to face that again this year. So there's a little bit of a concern that we're going to get into. And again, not that Temple is quite where those bottom 3 teams that you mentioned are, but I hope that it doesn't take us going to that level for the change to happen to come back up the ladder. But no, you're right. I mean, it's interesting too to see how things have shifted from whenever I was in school, 7 years ago, 6, 7 years ago now. You know, Michigan State wasn't a school that we really worried about a whole lot. And now I have a bunch of people that I know that went to Michigan State, and I kind of root for Michigan State in basketball just because I like Tom Izzo a lot, and it's Big Ten school, reminds me a lot of Penn State, and our basketball team, while I do support them, isn't quite as competitive as Michigan State. But it's funny because that was, I think, our last game of the season, and people would say, you know, what's your rival? And people would be like, your rival's Michigan State. I'm like, no, it's not. No, of course it's not. We always win that game. And that's just not the situation anymore. And it's been fun to watch Michigan State come up and actually become, I guess, more of a rival, but we don't have that in-state kind of back and forth. There's always the question is, who is Penn State's rival? Which kind of leads me to the Pitt game, because I'm just jacked up for that, and I'm really, really excited to be back in Pittsburgh for that game.
Yeah, it's the Big Ten manufactured rival. So They like all the rivalries to take place in the final weekend: Ohio State, Michigan, Indiana, Purdue. If you go through the whole list, and Maryland and Rutgers came on board at the same time, so they kind of came as a packaged rivalry deal, I guess. But yeah, they had to kind of match up Penn State and Michigan State. And Penn State can up the ante. It will be an extremely important game in the future.
Go back to that, yeah.
All right, Pitt. So you got Kent State. Let's assume that's a win. You're in good shape. You move on. All right. It's going to be kind of interesting, and you'll have to fill us in on what your plans are for the Pitt game, because to me, Pitt-Penn State's a big deal. It used to be a really big deal. You obviously live right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But even on a national scale, people talked about the Pitt-Penn State game and the rivalry, but you don't always play, so it's kind of drifted off.
Oh, I mean, it's been years, and I probably have it somewhere of exactly how long it's been. Let's see. 2000. So it's been 16 years since we've played. And so never in my time at Penn State, obviously. And it's the game that I always remember my brother and dad going to. Neither one of them went to Pitt or Penn State. They always just went down and got tickets and hung out for the game. And it was just a good college football game to go to. So I just booked a flight last week to get back to Pittsburgh, but tickets are outrageous. I mean, you have Penn Staters who bought Pitt season tickets, and they're just going to either flush them or sell them or whatever they want to do with them for the rest of the season. But that was just to get that one ticket. So right now, just planning on being in the city, hoping we can get our hands on some tickets somehow and not pay $300. But just to be in the atmosphere of it all is going to be worth it 100%. I mean, I'm flying out at 10 o'clock at night on Friday and flying back at 7 in the morning on Sunday. So I'm very seriously just going to be in the atmosphere of this game. And it is a big deal because I think each school talks so much smack for no real reason, other than, it was kind of a school that a lot of people were toying between. I never actually even looked at Pitt just because I didn't want to be that close to home, and I liked the atmosphere at Penn State. I liked the fact that I was in the middle of nowhere and I was on a college campus and I knew who everybody was. Well, not everybody, that's a lot of kids, but at least knew that all of the people were college students. And at Pitt, you don't really get that. So I'm very excited. I think what I'm most excited to see is the division of fan base. I think Onward State ran an article that said Pitt had record ticket sales, because you watch those games on TV. I don't know how much you follow Pitt, but there's no one there. There's no one there. And it stinks for those kids because they have to get bussed down or walk down or cab down. They try to tailgate, and you've got city cops all over the place making sure that no one's underage drinking. And, so that's a little bit of the city school, like, sorry, you picked that school and I'm, on a college campus. But they don't have easy access to Heinz Field. So I do really feel for Pitt students in that respect, and that even if the football team was good, I don't think they would be filling that stadium. But I'm nervous about it, and I wish I wasn't. I'd like to go into this very confident, but Pitt has been building a pretty solid program over the years, and I don't think they can be counted out, and they've been relevant on their scale for a good couple of years now. And they've got some solid players that I think are going to make an impact. And I think they're going to be as jacked up as we are to play this game.
Tough for me to add to that analysis. That's well done, Kelly.
It's not a great analysis. It's just me being very excited to get there.
Well, I was going to say that Pitt, regardless of the outcome of the game, is going to have to be thankful to Penn State, because as you well stated, the stands aren't full at Pitt. And I'm not as familiar as you with the challenges of the students trying to get to the game, but it always, they're one of a handful of schools out there that play major college football in the middle of a city, and you see it at Miami where the stands are half full for fairly important games, and you're like, how does this program compete at the level that they do? And the fan interest doesn't seem to be there, at least in person. Obviously, it is to a certain extent for them to pour the money that they do into football and to compete at that level. But yeah, to have that stadium full, an NFL stadium, it's got to be odd for you. And we'll see what the emotion is to walk into a very familiar place, but be the road team.
Yeah, it's going to be very weird. And that's what I think is going to be a fun dynamic is that if my guesstimate is correct, I have a feeling it's going to be 75-25 as far as the actual fan base is divided. And that might be a bold prediction, but I don't think it is, just because you do have so many Penn State graduates living and working in the city of Pittsburgh. And a lot of us, I guess, like me, are from outside of Pittsburgh and wanted to get away a little bit. And it's not super far. It's only about 2.5 hours. But there's so many people in the city of Pittsburgh that are Penn State grads. And, my dad and I have been talking about this for a full year. When they announced it, I was like, Dad, we're going absolutely 100%. And then I think my mom got in his ear and was like, we're not spending that on tickets. So he might end up getting to crash me and my friends, but it will be very interesting. Yeah, to be the road team at Heinz Field, I don't even know how I'll feel about that. But it might be my only game at Heinz Field this year, so I'll take it. I'll be happy to be there.
Temple, after the Pitt game, Temple, Michigan, that's 3 of the first 4 games. So hopefully you can kind of weather the storm and come out with a decent record, because that's a pretty rough start after Kent State to face Temple, Pitt, and Michigan on the road. It could be a little bit rough out of the gate for your boys.
Yeah, Michigan on the road will be interesting too, just because, the Harbaugh regime will continue to build over these next couple of years. And I think they were kind of getting their footing last year still. And I think this year it's going to be a much more well-oiled machine. And any game at the Big House is not easy to kind of buckle down and focus. And it's interesting. I guess this is, for me, one of the first years that I don't have as much of a connection with the team. And that's just part of growing up, so I need to get over it. But and start doing better research and not just rely on what I, see popping up because I still know people there. But now I'm so removed from it. I'm so old.
Yeah,
but that's
getting up there.
Yeah, I know. It feels very weird. I think it's hard for me too because I can't get back to Penn State. So that's one of the downfalls of it being in the middle of nowhere. Is it's just a lot harder to get back for a game. Living 9 hours south of Pittsburgh, it's a little difficult. But I really think these Big Ten games, that's going to be where it really turns into that's when the conversation will start to turn on to Franklin. Again, these individual players are obviously, as you mentioned, they're ranked, they're analyzed. Everyone will kind of know what they're bringing to the table. But I think that's where he'll be under the scrutiny of how he steps up to the table.
We're talking a little Heinz Field, so before I let you go, Kelly, the Steelers, most people are projecting them to be a Super Bowl threat. I am playing fantasy football for the first time in my life, which shocks most people that I'm playing fantasy football, because people, for whatever reason, are always asking me for fantasy football advice, and then I let them know, do you realize I've never played? So I'm playing this year.
Crazy, okay.
Yeah, somebody dragged me into a league, and Antonio Brown is like, I didn't realize that he is like the default number 1 guy.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a given. Antonio Brown's number 1.
Yeah.
Crazy. So just your thoughts about the Steelers. You got to be excited there. Ben needs to stay healthy, but otherwise it looks like a team that's very viable to be a threat in the postseason.
You nailed it. Ben needs to stay healthy. Everyone needs to stay healthy. We've got to figure out a good backup quarterback situation because we don't have one right now. And that has come back just about every year, I think, at least in recent years, to really be a problem for us. Antonio Brown is wonderful. I need Le'Veon Bell to stop being Le'Veon Bell. I really like him. I liked him coming out of Michigan State. Again, another person that I've followed and I know and I'm familiar with, and I was really rooting for him. And now I just want to smack him upside the head and tell him to stop smoking pot. However, that is not confirmed, so I can't say that happened. But it's just No, I'm very excited. It's always fun when they're competitive, which is pretty regular, but it always makes me nervous when get predicted as a Super Bowl team, because I almost feel like that makes them comfortable. They are a team that plays much better when their backs are against the wall. It has been that way for so long, and I don't know if that's a Roethlisberger thing, but when they're projected to not do well, they come out swinging. And when they're projected to do well, they kind of like mosey on through and then all of a sudden get beat by the Browns. You know, something like that would happen. So I always like to err on they're not going to be good. They're going to screw up. Something bad's going to happen. And then I like to get excited from there, which is a really kind of sick way of going about my fandom. But it's kind of the way it's always worked out for me. When we're not doing well, all of a sudden things get better. So I'm going to say they're not going to go to the Super Bowl, and hope that works in a reverse fashion for me, but we'll see.
Please don't take offense to this. I think I can make this comment to you, but I'm always intrigued by the female perspective on their fandom. It's much different than the male perspective. There's this,
I'm not offended by that.
There's this instinctual thing. Maybe it's a compliment. Maybe I shouldn't have prefaced it by saying you might get offended.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not offended by that. I mean, it's funny because my friends here, it's in Tennessee. Nashville's a very interesting place because you've got the Titans, but you also have so many people from other places that have come to Nashville. So you've got fan bases from all over the place, and then you have the Titans, which, as you're very aware, the Titans historically are just very not good. Is probably a fun way to put it for at least the last 5 years. But, everyone's looking at them too, trying to root them on. And they've got my former defensive coordinator, Dick LeBeau, who I love so very, very much. But it's very weird to see him in Titans. You talk about like being the visiting team in Heinz Field, seeing Dick LeBeau in Titans gear like broke my heart. And I don't even know why I was so upset by it, because he's a great guy, but I was just, I don't know, it didn't look quite right.
Well, when you put on the gear of one of the established NFL powers, Giants, Steelers, Packers, there's a certain aura to that. And then you almost look like you went down to high school when you throw on the Titans powder blue.
Yes. No. Women, we look at things a little bit differently. And like I said, I choose to be, it's probably a lot like dating. Maybe it's all your fault, all men's fault. You know, I look at it like I'm going to be disappointed. And if I'm pleasantly surprised, then we've had a good day. That's maybe the way I go about it. I don't know.
That's a conversation for another day, I think.
Oh, yeah. That might be more like a therapy session, not exactly a football conversation.
And I will certainly listen, but I'm probably not the one to help.
We can do an advice column instead.
Wow. Mark Rogers TV taking on all sorts of
totally different name.
Yeah, just blowing people away with going a completely different direction. All right, Kelly Rippin from Fox 17 there in Nashville. It's always a fun discussion, Kelly. We appreciate it. Good luck to your Penn State Nittany Lions this year.
Thank you. I'm excited. Like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic this year. Hopefully Franklin can sell exactly what he's been selling and show us some product. We'll see.
Have a great weekend. Stay out of the rain.
You know what? I'm going to take a very long nap because it is raining, so I'll enjoy it.
See you.
Have a good day.
All right, you too.